All right, so we're here with John Scholl, Superintendent of Chino Valley School District. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming into the studios here at Talking Laughs Media. And today, as a part of our ongoing series of discussions regarding workforce housing, attainable housing, water management, growth, we wanted to bring you in because, one, you're a leading employer in the region, but also as superintendent of Chino Valley School District, the schools are pillars of our community, and we really want to dig in and help educate people on what some of the current challenges are with growth versus non-growth and all those other things. They're all connected. Right. So appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, no problem.
I guess first thing is congratulations on getting through COVID. I think we're through it.
I'm hoping.
Okay.
We've survived fairly well, and our kids have been in school all year, and so that's been good for the community, good for the staff, and we are dealing with some people getting COVID and the staffing issues and the lack of substitutes, and we've managed all that, but I see a light at the end of the tunnel. Hopefully it doesn't take a left turn like it has in the past. But
Gotcha. So having said that, let's give people a little background on terms of the context and scope of the school district. How many kids and families do you serve?
We have about 2,400 kids.
Okay.
Pre-K to 12th grade. So that's actually 3-year-olds all the way up to 22-year-olds.
Right.
And we serve the communities of Chino Valley and Paulden.
Okay.
So we're 400 square miles. There's
Go
parts
Cougars.
Go Cougars. There's parts of the airport that are actually in our school district, all the way up to Drake Cement on 89, if you know where that is.
I didn't know you had 2,400 students in your district. That's fairly large for our region. And do you know how many, about total staff and teachers do you employ?
We employ anywhere between 250 and 300 staff, 250 regular staff, and then we have people like coaches and substitutes and people that are not necessarily regular employees, but we are the largest employer in Chino Valley.
I was going to say that you must be.
Yeah, and so that's it's nice to have that much support of the community.
Right.
We do, our budget goes to mostly about 85% of our budget is in salaries and benefits.
Right.
And so that goes to the community members, and that goes to support the community as a whole through buying things and taxes and things like that.
So let's get into it. Let's talk about some people call it attainable housing. Some people call it affordable housing. Some people call it
workforce housing is what I like to call it. Yeah.
How has the housing challenges, because there's different parts of these challenges, right? We could get in a lot of different rabbit holes. How has it affected the school district?
Well, I think
where do you want to start, I should say, excuse me.
The most recent experience we've had is due to a lack of teachers, not just in Chino Valley or Yavapai County. This is statewide and actually a national issue. We've had some special education teacher openings that we actually filled with international teachers. So we have 4 teachers from the Philippines that are all special ed. We also have our school psychologists from the Netherlands. And these are all either on H-1B or J-1 visas. And they have come in to fill slots that we couldn't fill otherwise.
Why do you, number one, I don't know how you found them. That'd be an interesting story. Number 2, why are these people filling the spot, and why weren't locals available or didn't want to?
There's just, especially with special ed teachers, special education teachers, there's just a lack of teachers, lack of people.
Okay.
And up in Yavapai County, we tend to pay less than down in Phoenix. So if someone's going to move to Arizona, really where to make the money is Phoenix, but you don't have the quality of life that we have up in Yavapai County.
Right.
And we're pretty lucky. We are on a 4-day week, and that has been a real attractive benefit to employees. We do the same number of hours of instruction. We still meet the minimum number of hours that we were required for every grade level. We just do it in 4 weeks instead of, or 4 days instead of 5 days a week.
So you're Monday through Thursday?
Monday through Thursday. And we get teachers that will come out of the valley, make less money because they want that quality of life and have that 3-day week. And for especially for teachers, a lot of teachers that work 5 days a week, they'll work on Saturday to get caught up.
Right.
This way they can work on Friday and still have that weekend available to them.
That's a really good point,
Yeah.
right? Because we're overworked and underpaid. From what I hear, I don't know if that's true or not. You brought up a good point, though, because the data is showing is people are gravitating towards quality of life. You said there's just a lack of teachers in special ed, but let's talk about the general teacher population. Are you having difficulty? I know probably a lot of these teachers were already local, but are you running into folks that are having difficulty finding housing?
Absolutely. And for example, with these international teachers, part of our concern was we didn't know where they were going to live. And they didn't, there's some issues that are unique to that group of people. They don't have credit. So if you want, they can't do a credit check on them because they don't have that credit and things like that. So we did find housing. I think there was 3 of them that lived in a house with another person, with a landlord. But this is not, and especially in Chino Valley, what we're seeing is we have a lot of people coming in from outside of the area. They can, other neighboring states, they can sell their house. They can make a ton of money, come to Chino Valley or come to the area, pay cash for their home, pay cash for their RV.
Right.
And they don't want to pay taxes. And they don't have that connection, that community connection to the school district, like people that have been around and had their kids go through, or they might have gone through themselves.
Right.
And so there's that disconnect with the community, or some of the community, not all, but some members of the community and the school district. And at that same time, prices are being driven up by the demand of those people coming in, not making it affordable for not just teachers, but nurses and firefighters and police and that workforce housing of those people that do a lot of the work that needs to get done on a daily basis in the area.
So you brought up a really good point. We talked about it with our another guest, Grant Cazada of Founding Fathers Collective, when he talked about when you move to a place like this, taking on the community culture and being connected, as opposed to saying, no, not in my backyard. I moved here to get away from this or that. In reality, they're moving to get out of the hustle and bustle, but at the same time, that attitude, that negative attitude is, this isn't my responsibility, is destructive. And that's, again, a part of the purpose of what we're doing here with these shows is having that communication, educating people. No, we need you involved.
Right.
We need you to collaborate, or these things are going to fall apart. That part of it, I think, is something that's overlooked and super important, is that connectivity that you said. There's a disconnect when they move here. And I moved here in 2004 in a similar situation. I did well on our house. In fact, doubled our money in 2 years on our home in San Diego. Moved here, but I was a one-off, had a baby girl, wanted to get involved and got highly involved in the community. Are you hearing, because I know you guys talk with the other superintendents from Prescott Unified School District and Humboldt, which is Prescott Valley, of the same situation? Are they running into the same challenges?
I don't know as much. Prescott. I think that what's interesting is, even though it's the Quad City or Tri-City area, however you want to talk about it, each community is really unique. Prescott Valley has, their housing wise, they've done a great job with their infrastructure, their water and sewer. Chino Valley lacks infrastructure and doesn't have that water and sewer available, which has changed things. And so I think that because of the uniqueness of each community, it's a little bit different. And I know Prescott Valley has been very progressive about getting families in,
right,
and building those subdivisions and things like that, and building the high density housing, and it's the culture in Prescott Valley to do that. And Prescott is a little bit landlocked. There's not a whole lot for them whole lot of places for them to go, and Chino Valley is wide open, but people go to Chino Valley to live on a half acre or an acre or 2 acres and not live in an apartment.
So let's talk about something for a second. on the funding side, so people know, we want people to learn,
right,
is where does the Chino Valley School District get its funding?
Okay.
Where does that come from?
So there's two sources for the most part, for most of our budget. There is property taxes, and then there are what's called state equalization. So there's school districts like, and I'm going to use our neighbor Prescott. They, based on the number of students, there's a budget that's made, and that budget is controlled by the school district. But the income for that budget is determined by the number of students times a factor that the legislature determines. That budget in Prescott is funded 100% by property taxes. Mm-hmm. So they have their tax base is large enough to cover the entire amount. Actually, more. They have to give money they collect more than they can use and have to give money to the state because there's a minimum school tax.
Right.
Where in Arizona, or where in Chino Valley, there's not the tax base enough to contribute the whole amount to the district. So there's a tax rate that's calculated, and then the difference between what's collected from property taxes and what the budget is paid through state equalization out of the state budget.
Gotcha. What do you say, without putting you on the spot, because I know some of this is political, right? So I'm going to be fair to you, but it's helpful to know what do you say to leadership, both at the local level and the state level, regarding things like housing, because they're all tied together, and education, and to the people that are disconnected, that say, not my backyard, this isn't my responsibility. Right. What do you say as the superintendent of the school district to those things?
So, really what I talk about is what I feel is a social contract. My daughter is 24. I don't have a daughter in school. But when she was going through school, she went to public school, and she went to Prescott Unified School District, and people in PUSD were paying for her to be educated. And I feel it's my social contract to pay for other kids to go through school. Right. And a lot of times you talk to these people that don't want to pay property taxes or pay taxes in general, and they say, did your kid go to public school? There were property tax payers that paid for your child to go through school at that time. Right. So it's just part of it's an investment in the community. Right. It's a social contract, and without education, without schools, you're not going to have the doctors, the nurses, the people that are going to take care of you as you age, the fire, police, all those things that we expect a community to have is really dependent on having the workers available to do those. And the way, if you price them out, you're not going to have, it's going to be even that much more difficult, that much more expensive to have those people that you want, when something happens, or the kind of community that you want.
So if you have a struggling school district because you have poor funding, my guess is that translates to struggling students or families, which translates to what? You have people either they don't have jobs or they're not professionally developing. I'm guessing that part of that translates to crime and other issues. I'm trying to connect all these things because they are connected. Right. And it concerns me when we have underfunded or struggling school districts because of whether it's a housing issue or inflation. Mm-hmm. I know as a whole in the state, our school districts are funded by correct me if I'm wrong, an archaic funding model. It's dated, right? It
is, and there's parts of it that aren't tied to inflation.
Right.
So, we're looking at numbers that the calculations that were determined, as late as 1980 is an issue that we're dealing with now. The aggregate expenditure limit, that was determined in 1980. Right. And then our capital budgets are determined from a calculation from 20 years ago. And if you think about what schools look like today compared to what schools look like 20 or 40 years ago, think about technology and security and these things that have changed in the community as a whole or society as a whole, how they're impacting schools. It's more expensive to educate a kid now than it was proportionally back 20 or 40 years ago.
Right. You mentioned density earlier, and where the town of Chino Valley may be going. And again, I need to do some more research on it, but we talk about this a lot in terms of community building, whether it's a planned community, annexation and planned community, or a lower density, half an acre to an acre and a half, and going that route. There's definitely some advantages, especially for the people concerned about water.
Uh-huh.
There's a great ASU study out on the proliferation of private wells throughout the state.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think people really understand, or maybe they just haven't seen this information, this data. It's really interesting. In fact, I think we have parts of it in a water video we did with John Munderloh, which we'll be sharing and have up online, that so much water is being consumed by unmetered wells. What do we do with that? There's some definite advantages to the density. And I know that open space and having those options as well, private property ownership is a big deal, is really important. But there's something to be said about high density metered water, because these acre and a half properties, half acre properties are on wells.
Right.
People coming in that aren't used to a well because they're used to metered water. And so now we have possibly higher water consumption. But also that means less properties helping to fund our districts and so forth. Does that make sense? Is there less? If there's less density, it means there's less housing.
Right.
And that means also it's going to be harder for things like infrastructure and growth to occur from a financial standpoint. I'm not a financial analyst. I'm certainly not a community planner, but the math seems to concern me when we don't allow for some areas to have density in growth. Is that something that the school district looks at from a policy standpoint and go, oh, this could be a challenge?
I think it's more that with the density, it's more home availability. And it's not just teachers. We have a significant homeless population in Chino Valley, and that is, and I want to say homeless under federal guidelines, because when some people think about homeless, you think about living in a field or living in a park or things like that.
They're couch surfing,
right? And we have those. We have kids that turn 18 and their parents say, "Hey, I want you out of the house."
Right.
And we do our best to support those kids and get them graduated, because that's going to be the best chance for their success.
And this is a challenge. I'd like to just add, it's just not Chino Valley, Prescott Valley. I'm involved with the Humboldt Education Foundation. We have kids couch surfing because of a divorce or death, or just parents that aren't with it.
Yeah.
And this is region-wide issue, not just one community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so federal guidelines also means maybe a family lost their home and they moved in with another family. That would make them homeless because they don't have their own home, or they live in a residential hotel or something like that. So even living in a fifth wheel or something with wheels is not a permanent home, and that's considered homeless. But people are living like that because they can't afford. There's not an affordable apartment or multi-unit housing or a duplex or something for them to live in under the current circumstances. And so, and also those higher density housing typically means more kids into the district.
Right.
And a growing district, student-wise, is a much healthier district than a shrinking district, financially.
Right. You brought some information here.
Yeah.
I was wondering what you wanted to talk about, because there's some stuff there that I'm sure is pretty interesting for our listeners.
So one of the items, the first thing is in Chino Valley, there's discussions, and it may have already happened, about removing the 0.16 acre zoning from availability, landowners would no longer be able to change their zoning to that 0.16, which is a typical subdivision lot. Okay. About 1/8 of an acre or a little less. And so that means that there would be no more subdivisions like we're used to seeing. New subdivisions.
When you say subdivision, can we also call this like a planned community?
Exactly.
Would that be fair? Okay.
they would be Granville or
Right.
Highland Ranch in Chino Valley or Bright Star in Chino Valley that would no longer be available. And so it's interesting because there's a bill right now in the legislature that would make it where it's House Bill 2674 would create a by right zoning process for apartment and single family home developments that make all agricultural, commercial, and residential land open for new housing. So basically, there's people at the state level that are recognizing, and you had mentioned NIMBYs, not my backyards.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's a term they use in here.
Right.
That people aren't allowing these zoning because they don't want the apartment complex, the duplexes.
They don't want the density, or they're here now. Close the gate behind us. And look, I moved here for quality of life too.
Right.
But I also am acutely aware that global population growth is inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
And what we say in the next magazine, I keep it, is, but bad design doesn't have to be inevitable.
Right.
And again, the purpose of these shows going forward is talking about this.
Uh-huh.
And it kind of drives me crazy that now, I read a similar article in AZ Central Republic. There's 250 to 270,000 units short on workforce or affordable housing.
Right.
And yet they just had a couple projects turned down because of that not in my backyard attitude. But up here is also different because what gets complicated when you talk about, say, an annexed properties, planned communities, metered water, measured water versus basically wildcat developments is what I think maybe they call it. Now, I'll be honest with you. I'm in unincorporated Chino Valley. I drive very far to come to work every day. That's the cost of living that way. But I'm not demanding or saying not in my backyard because I also believe that there has to be well-designed growth. And I also am very concerned about water use. I'm looking at people who are new. Are they going to start trying to farm? We got rid of agriculture up here a while ago because of water usage.
Yeah.
I think people realize that we use less now than we did, I think, back in you can correct me if I'm wrong, the 70s maybe, or even 60s, because agriculture was so prevalent. It really sucks up a lot of water.
Right.
So there's something to be said about these planned communities in measure, because it not only benefits a tax base and it's better use of land, which is finite, by the way, but it also benefits things like our concerns with water.
Yeah. And, not just the use of fresh water, but it's the capturing of the wastewater in addition.
Right.
That can be, instead of having all these septic systems all over the place.
Which is concerning to me.
Right. It goes to a sewage treatment plant, and then that can be recharged in a safer manner.
Effluent.
So that's absolutely important. So that's one concern or one topic I brought up. The other is school districts are not subject to zoning laws. So we've been considering for a while. There's an area behind Del Rio School in Chino Valley off of 2 North and 1 West. Where Heritage and Del Rio are next to each other, our middle school and 3 through 5 school. We have some property back there that we've considered building a teacherage. And a teacherage is basically homes owned by the school district where staff can live.
That sounds like, now that's the kind of stuff I like to talk about. Is that possible? Can't we think out of the box on this stuff and get it going?
Right.
Who needs to be involved in that conversation besides, the by Board of Supervisors, builders, foundations that can help benefit community members like me that want to raise funds in unique ways. That to me is something that I would love to continue to talk about. How do we continue the conversation so something comes to fruition?
Right. And part of that is there's what's called public-private partnerships, where in addition to the zoning, the no requirements for zoning or not having to follow the zoning requirements, is we don't pay property taxes. So if we could build something on, partner with a private partnership, they make a little bit money on it. We get a benefit because we could put our teachers or our staff housed. Saves money because of the not having to pay not having to worry about zoning, not worrying about the property taxes. That is, benefits the community, benefits the school district, benefits, there's that public-private partnership is definitely something to look into. And we had talked earlier about Yavapai College and their 3D printing. We talked, can we have a 3D printed village out there? And again, one of our struggles is infrastructure. We have a grandfathered well out there that feeds the schools that we can actually feed this housing area with, but we don't have sewer. Right. So we have to put in the sewer infrastructure for this, and that's still subject to the county regulations. But and it's coming down to I've consulted with our attorney about the possibility of renting an apartment complex. So it would be a private owner that could rent the whole complex to us, right, and we put our staff in there.
Is that built specific you're alluding to maybe as a new complex?
Well, it could be a new complex, or it could be an existing complex that as units open up, we just secure those for our staff.
So that's like a second option. You got the teacherage, which you talked about, right, and then we got this other one you're talking about.
I know out in, I think it was Parker, they bought a hotel and converted. It was an underused hotel. Converted this hotel to teacher housing or staff housing.
So would be the days in, it would be the teachers in.
Exactly,
nice.
Exactly.
What else do you got?
That was about it. It's just we are looking for any way that we can to support our staff, to bring in staff, whether it be internationally or for many years. And there's a group of superintendents going up to South Dakota this year, and I've been up to South Dakota 2 or 3 times. To recruit fantastic teachers, just a different educational structure, all these tiny little colleges all throughout the state, not like, we have basically 4 big ones,
right?
SU, U of A, NAU, and GCU. And so you have all these small universities and colleges throughout the state that are pumping out tons of highly educated, great teachers. We sell the adventure. We sell the 4-day week. Hey, come to Arizona. It's nice. It's typically, I've been up there, it's like a high of 12.
Yeah,
and we can say it's a high of, here's what the weather's like in Arizona.
Right.
And so we sell the adventure. They come to us. Typically they'll last a couple of years, but they do a fantastic job for us while they're here.
What I'm getting out of this, because I've heard it twice now in a row with different shows, is what you said earlier at the beginning, is the connection to community.
Uh-huh.
As we bring people in, how do we get them fully vested in our community? So not only are they bringing their expertise to benefit our community,
right,
and we're investing in that, but also that they reinvest in the community and they bring that attitude that created our community.
Right.
Our communities are very rural up here, whether you're talking Chino, Prescott Valley. It's got fantastic quality of life,
right,
relatively low taxes in some areas. And a lot of it, this was created by the politics, private property rights. So there's a double-edged sword there when you talk about private property rights, but the overall attitude of a simple life, you can still have growth and still maintain that and be connected to the community. Because as Grant mentioned from Founding Fathers is, we want to make sure when we bring people in, if they're from out of town, have they connected to the community? Are they involved?
Right.
It matters.
Yeah.
So,
and that's been a challenge for us, bringing in young, typically single people, freshly graduated out of college. We bring in the Chino Valley, and they're fantastic teachers, but to really live the life of a 22-year-old, 24-year-old, you're looking to make those connections with other young people and eventually find a significant other. That doesn't happen in Chino Valley.
Right.
It's not, you don't have those places like Whiskey Row or downtown Prescott or things like that. And so it does make it tough. And that's one reason why we can only keep them for a couple of years, because they're looking for a different lifestyle than Chino Valley offers. They've done a great job for us. But Chino Valley is more of established, tends to be older, and the things in Chino Valley tend to be for older people.
Right.
Even kids. There's not a whole lot for kids to do in Chino Valley. itself.
Right. Well, John Scholl, Superintendent, Chino Valley School District up here in Central Arizona, part of the Quad Cities region. Really appreciate you coming in. We come back to continue to talk about it because I think we've scratched the surface. We go through a million rabbit holes. Right in Chino Valley, we have gopher holes.
Yeah.
Would you come back?
Absolutely.
Well, we really appreciate having you. This is all about making a good life. This is about Central Arizona. How do we start collaborating about housing, water, politics, and instead of arguing about it, work together on it. Appreciate having you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, John.